Nobody sends you a congratulations email when it happens. Your bank doesn't call. There's no confetti on your screen. But somewhere along the way, without any fanfare at all, your financial life changes permanently. It's the moment when your investments start generating more wealth than your effort ever could. Most people imagine wealth building as a slow, steady climb. You put money in, it grows a little. You put more money in, it grows a little more. But that picture is wrong. Wealth doesn't build in a straight line. It builds in a curve. And that curve has three distinct moments where everything accelerates. Three tipping points where your net worth goes from barely moving to compounding so fast it almost feels unfair. Today, I'm going to break down all three of those tipping points, show you the exact math behind each one, and help you figure out precisely where you stand on that curve right now. Because once you understand how this works, you'll never look at your portfolio the same way again. Let's set the stage with where most people actually are. The median household in America brings in roughly $83,700 a year. If you're under 35, your median net worth sits somewhere around $39,000. And the national savings rate has fallen to about 4% of income. What that tells us is simple. For the vast majority of people, almost all of their wealth growth is coming from one place: their job. Their investments exist, but they're not really pulling any weight yet. The portfolio is too small for returns to matter much. And that's not a failure of strategy. It's just physics. You haven't reached enough mass for gravity to take over. That changes at the first tipping point. The first tipping point is when your annual investment returns start producing more than your annual contributions. This is where the math flips in your favor for the first time. Here's a simple way to see it. Say you're putting away $10,000 a year into a broad index fund. The long-term historical average return of the S&P 500 is roughly 10% annually. When your portfolio reaches $100,000, a 10% return on that balance equals $10,000. That's the same amount you saved all year. Your money just matched your effort dollar for dollar. Warren Buffett's late partner, Charlie Munger, was famous for saying that the first 100,000 is the hardest part. And after that, you can start to coast a little. He meant it literally. Getting to that first 100,000 typically takes 7 to 10 years of disciplined saving. But once you cross that line, reaching 200,000 usually takes only about 5 more years. And doubling again from 200 to 400,000 happens even faster than that. The reason is that your returns are now compounding on top of themselves. Every dollar your portfolio earns gets reinvested and starts earning its own returns. The snowball is finally big enough to pick up real speed as it rolls. But here's the trap that catches so many people right at this stage. The stock market drops in roughly 1 out of every 3 calendar years. When you're sitting on $100,000 and the market falls 15 or 20%, watching $15,000 or $20,000 vanish from your account is gut-wrenching. This is exactly when people panic. They sell at the bottom, they pause their contributions, and they shatter the very momentum they spent years building. The investors who break through to the next level are the ones who keep contributing through those downturns because every dollar invested during a dip buys more shares at lower prices, and those shares produce outsized returns when the market recovers. The second tipping point is when your portfolio's annual growth matches your entire salary. This one doesn't just change your finances. It changes the way you think about money and time and work. If your household earns the median income of $83,700 and your investments average a 10% annual return, you reach this tipping point when your portfolio hits approximately $837,000. At that level, your investments generated the same amount of new wealth in a single year as every paycheck you earned combined. You didn't put in extra hours, you didn't negotiate a raise, your portfolio just quietly matched your entire annual income in growth alone. Now think about what happens in a strong year. The S&P 500 gained over 26% in 2023 and followed that up with more than 25% in 2024. If someone had $400,000 invested at the start of 2023, their portfolio would have generated more growth over those 2 years than most American households earned from working full-time during the same period. That's the power of this second tipping point. Once you cross it, the gap between what your job pays you and what your money earns you starts widening every single year. At $500,000, a 10% return hands you $50,000. At $1 million, that same percentage delivers $100,000. At $2 million, you're looking at $200,000 of growth without adding a single new dollar. Your money is now outrunning you, and it's not even close. The third tipping point is financial independence. This is the moment your portfolio grows large enough to cover every dollar you spend for the rest of your life without ever needing another paycheck. The most widely used formula for this is called the 4% rule. You take your total annual living expenses and multiply by 25. That gives you the portfolio size that can sustainably fund your lifestyle indefinitely. If your annual spending is $60,000, your independence number is $1.5 million. If you spend $80,000, you need $2 million. At $100,000 a year in expenses, the target is $2.5 million. Those are big numbers, but here's what most people don't realize. The hardest part of reaching financial independence isn't the final stretch. It's the early years before tipping point 1. Once your returns are outpacing your contributions and then matching your salary, the compounding engine does the heavy lifting for you. The distance between tipping point 2 and tipping point 3 shrinks dramatically compared to the distance between 0 and tipping point 1. Consider this. The median net worth for Americans between 55 and 64 is about $364,000. But the average net worth for that same group is over $1.5 million. That enormous gap between the median and the average tells you that a relatively small group of people who stayed consistent and let compounding work over decades pulled dramatically ahead of everyone else. They didn't have secret investments. They didn't time the market. They just refused to interrupt the curve. And that's the part that matters most. It doesn't matter whether you're starting with $500 or $50,000. The math doesn't reward your starting balance. It rewards your consistency. It rewards your patience. And more than anything, it rewards your willingness to stay invested through the years that feel like nothing is happening. Every dollar you put into the market today is planting a seed. For a while, the growth will feel invisible. You'll check your balance and wonder if any of this even makes a difference. But you're building the foundation of an exponential curve, and every contribution is pulling you closer to that first tipping point where compound growth kicks in and your money starts earning more than you physically can. So here's a simple exercise. Take your current portfolio value and divide it by the amount you invest each year. If that number is below 10, you're in the building phase. Keep pushing. If it's between 10 and 25, you've entered the acceleration zone, where compounding is doing serious work. And if it's above 25, you may be much closer to financial independence than you think. The tipping points are mathematical certainties. They will happen for anyone who stays in the game long enough. The only variable is you. If this helped you see your financial future more clearly, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next.